to go. We're already running a little bit late, and we have a lot of stuff. Can't hear. Is this any better? Yeah? Okay. I'd like to call to order the Stroke Committee. We have a full agenda, so I'm going to skip the roll call. Lisa's excused. Everyone else is here. We do have a new member, Joanna Morton. You want to tell people about yourself? I mean, I can. No? Okay. Actually, she's amazing and shy. She is head of stroke and neurology at the HCA Hospital System in Austin. She also is very good with databases and registries and things like that, and has an extensive stroke background, so we really welcome her to our committee. Thank you. Yes? Can you turn me up?
Well, I don't know.
We heard you.
I'll talk louder, but that's about as best as I can do. Yep.
You didn't tell me that, no, but you
I mean, he was.
She seemed to be a rock singer.
Yeah, I'm not a. That's how I used to punish my children. How's this? Yeah, much better. Okay. Okay. So first up is Regional Advisory Committee Data Collection and Work Group Subcommittee, which is Ron. You have any report at this time?
No, sir. Just to look at that everybody's collecting the same 8 data points that is CMS put out. Some of the comprehensive sites they were using Get With The Guidelines, and now they've changed to Comment, which is similar but different kind of thing, and so I don't have anything else other than, pardon me. We're just talking about the data points that all the stroke systems are collecting, which were the set forth by CMS, and then some of our facilities that are gone comprehensive were using Get With The Guidelines, which were some extra data points, as well as they've changed from Get With The Guidelines to Comment, which is about the same, but it's got a couple of different data points that they're using. But beyond that,
could you get us a copy of the data points to bring
yes,
next
sir.
time?
I will.
And the other thing, I don't know to put Joanne on the spot, but because of your expertise, would you be willing to help him on that work committee?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Okay, next up is also you and Warren on the Trauma Registry Work Group Representation Confirmation Report. No?
Did you?
I didn't.
Didn't go? Okay.
I was there for the RAC, not for the stroke, but I think.
Okay, please do so.
You're okay.
All right.
This morning, the Trauma Registry Work Group met, and basically what they would require from, or would like for our representatives to come to the committee and do, and then the committee, through them, present some things. They have some action items that they illuminated that this is going to be their focus. The first one is to define 5 top issues to address from a stroke standpoint. Define the top 5 reports needed and prioritize the development of those reports, because it's not something that will just happen real quickly. So we need to enumerate which ones we would like to see done first. To define patient categories, to define the education needed for this, to implement this, and to define resources needed, limited to no funds. So that was kind of the action items that they would like for the representatives to bring back to the group and us to talk about, and then through them, if their next meeting. They're talking about having a meeting, I think, in a few weeks, perhaps a conference call to kind of continue and keep things going. Let's see. And basically, there were some complaints about some of the particular trauma registry things that are happening. For example, and one of the points that was very passionate, that folks were passionate about, was that if you're not keying your entry consistently after 30 minutes, it kicks you off and you have to log in and so forth. You can lose your information if you don't save it. If you're going to be away from your computer, you have to save it and come back. And this is a security issue. They said it won't be changed. It's going to be one of those deals that if you walk away from the computer, it's going to shut down for security reasons. It's system-wide, and there won't be any exceptions. So we will just have to get used to hitting the save button and coming back and relogging and going on. There were some complaints that the system was kicking people out inadvertently and then periodically. That they're going to check on that and find out what the deal is. They said that should not be a significant issue to overcome. So that's about it.
Thanks. Are there any questions? So, Jane, is number 10 on the agenda, the selection of a committee member to represent this committee? Does that go along with this?
Yes, it does, Dr. Rutledge. And let me just clarify that this is not a committee. It's actually a work group that is attached to Trauma Systems Committee. It gives this working group much greater flexibility in that they can meet by conference call if needed. They need to be, reactive and have a little more flexibility than we do with committees and having to go through the open meetings requirements. The meetings will be open to anyone who wishes to attend. We will have a page on the Trauma Systems Committee. There will be a section there for this work group so that we will post what the work group is doing, when its next meetings are, its minutes. The members of the work group, we ask that they be a conduit back to their committees and to their colleagues to provide information back to the stakeholders as to what is happening with the registry and how it's being addressed. Some of the things that came out today in our first meeting was that the registry staff is quite limited in their numbers, and they've had some illnesses, and so they're pretty much overwhelmed right now with just trying to put out fires. So I think some of the communication going back to the stakeholders with regards to fixes that they've done in the registry already, that feedback hasn't gone back out to the stakeholder groups. So this is one of the things that this group is going to address also.
In that we already have Ron and Warren as a subgroup of this to represent us. Can we use those people? And then the other question would be, could we also have volunteers if there are other people that could help in the stroke community?
Sure, anyone can attend these meetings. We're asking that each committee have at least one representative so that person can attend and bring the information back to you.
But we could have more than, that we have Ron and Warren already on that. We can use them.
Mm-hmm.
And then also if we had a volunteer, we could use them as well?
Certainly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There are representatives on this group from each one of the GTAC committees. There's a representative from TTCF, TTAF, Emergency Physicians Association, a member from the RACs. HT, who am I forgetting?
ACS and Cmte.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I know of one person who would like to volunteer to help with this, Ms. Bissell. Are there any other people that would be interested in this? Deb? Okay. And Bissell, are you? Yeah, this is what you want? This is what you want to? Okay. Deb, Bissell, and I mean, that's 4 people, so there's at least 50-50 chance somebody will get there. So unless are there any objections on the committee to add those people? Okay, so we'll have Ron, Warren, Deb, and Bissell, and so we'll have 4 representatives, and just whoever's there can bring back and then distribute information. It's good, thank you. Next up is the EMS Stroke Education Work Group. That's Homer. Again, you're taking the load here.
May not be much load. In our last meeting, I think we kind of wanted me to get a process lined up in a time frame. Jane and I just kind of, there were some alternative ways of doing this, and she's investigated those, and it's come down to 2 that probably are the most effective. The first one would be if DSHS by policy could require a certain number of CEs for EMS for the stroke as a part of the existing CE requirements. Just enumerate in our existing structure, you've got to have X number of hours. They can also consider making it a part of the requirement in revision to 157, which will take about 2 to 3 years. The policy could happen much quicker, a year or so, I think. Is that right? About a year. So what we need to do is to simply recommend and let you take to GTAC committee that we want this done, and the process will then start. Is that close?
Yeah, can you be more specific in?
Well, by policy, we could require a certain number of the CE hours to be dedicated to stroke care, okay? And in order for that to happen, we need this committee to make some recommendations on how many hours, what would that look like, take it to GTAC, and GTAC make that recommendation to us, and I think we can just take that through as a policy. It would only happen at recertification time when they renew. Then they'd be showing evidence of X number of hours. I mean, it's very similar to what the Board of Nursing has done, other boards have done as far as licensed professionals in the state. So it's really no different than that.
So before we had we've done some of this like BLS and, in the number of hours, and then we also talked about trying to design or steal other people's specific stroke things. Do you have thoughts or?
I think we agreed, or we talked about 4 hours for EMS, perhaps a couple at BLS level, EMT level, intermediate, and then a couple of hours for paramedics. And there was an issue about us providing the exact structure that we wanted, and I think that's something that DSHS can just say to leave it into an area that we need this developed, and those providers, CE providers, will step up and develop the programs and put them on there, and the state has to approve them as far as content. And so I think that we probably decided the best way is to go that route rather than try to say, let's go with this particular group's amount, and the state might be able to approve an agency, another organization's CE stroke content. I don't know.
Right, there could be more than one.
Right.
Sure, or it could be left up to the medical director of that service to determine, what they're going to use, but tell their staff that you need to have this amount of CE related to stroke, and this is what I want you to have. Or if they go to a national meeting and they have our EMS meeting, it's related to stroke. I mean, they can do it any way that we want, and really the less prescriptive that we are on our side gives more flexibility to the service as to how they get this and accomplish it for their staff.
So, what do you think about coming back with something formalized in writing next time that we could specifically discuss, vote on, and then move forward to the general counsel? Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, absolutely.
Does anyone else have discussion points or things they would like to add or thoughts?
I think Jane's exactly right. I don't think we should limit those guys to just a specific prescribed program. Just something, I thought we did in the past, we'd agree on like 4 hours of stroke-specific care.
Mm-hmm.
And any way your medical director chooses to allow that to happen.
Yeah, and we also talked about having various numbers depending on the level of the responder as well, which I think that's important too. I mean, I think that's what they're asking is, if you have a first responder, do they need 5 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour, and as you go up. So let's do this for next. Yes. Yeah.
Would you like for us to send our suggestions to HT?
Yes. Yes. Let's do that. And are there any suggestions from the audience? Things that you'd like to see? Sure. You can talk too, but she's first.
I'm Leanne Budger from the North Central Texas RAC. The only comment I wanted to make was just in my prior life as an educator, I'm pretty familiar with the recertification rules, and there's 5 options to recertify, 4 of which are active. Only one of them is based on CE hours. All the rest of them are, if you're nationally registered, you can, so you're talking about adding hours. It works for the CE option. If they're not using the CE option, if they're using the testing option, do you still want them to have the hours? So that's all you might want to clarify what you're really talking about. If you're talking about 4 additional hours no matter what, or only 4 hours for the set aside out of the CE option.
Right. That makes sense. Mark.
Thank you very much. I think it's great to have 4 hours of EMS education, and I think having flexibility is a great idea. I would suggest that the committee consider that at least one component of that be a field evaluation tool, such as the Cincinnati Stroke Scale or the LA Stroke Scale as a component of that educational program, because it's very important that when EMS sees patients in the field that they're able to talk the same language in terms of stroke recognition and stroke severity. So that's one thing that you might want to consider. The other component to EMS education is some education for the medical control officers. If your EMS is organized that there's a medical control officer by region or city who triages the calls, I think we would it would be a good idea to make sure that that medical control officer also has some degree of education when it comes to acute stroke triage and recognition. It may already be the case, and if that is the case, I apologize for bringing that up. Thank you.
Cool. So, Homer, if it's possible, I can task you to come up and we can actually do emails and stuff. Sure. With just a few people to add things to this.
Yes.
Yeah. So thanks for the comments. I especially like the comment about the different components in addition to the CE. Next is the stroke survey work group, and I think you have an update on that, Homer.
We decided we're going to try to do some type of a survey to gather some information. I think we agreed that it probably should be something very brief and easy to fill out, not essay answers. And I emailed out some questions to consider to get a start. I think there's several folks have got some ideas along that. As a start and as a suggestion, and this is not by any means, it's just a starting point, things like what can the GTAC Stroke Committee do to help to strengthen your stroke program? In minutes, how far is your closest stroke facility? Is it financially feasible to become a stroke facility regardless of your level? Those types of things, and I think, Ronnie, you had
when you start talking about the stroke education, one of the things that we found is talking about the level 3s, 2s, and 1s to make sure everybody understands that, and to make sure people are on board with having more level 3s that can better take care of stroke patients in the region, because not everybody's like a Metroplex or an Austin or San Antonio that has all these resources. You have to have multiple layers, and so that's one of the things we talked about in a sidebar conversation the other day.
Yeah, we're actually lucky. Dr. Alberts in just a minute is going to talk to some things that may help us in this regard. The thought I had is what we might do, because everyone can participate and help in this, what we might do is field questions to Homer, and then he could use a monkey survey to initiate that. But I think it's important that we don't burden the RACs with another 50-page questionnaire, that we do a very limited thing, and we could do this sort of ad hoc as we go along. And that way, because each of us probably have some different questions that we'd like to field and ask, and then we can even ask the RACs to come up with ideas of what they want to know from the other RACs as well. Part and parcel of that, do you have an email list from the DSHS of the RAC principals?
As far as there is a RAC
Contact list?
Yes, there is one,
Okay.
and I can share that with everybody. It won't be a problem if
Perfect.
Yes, we have a way we can contact them, and I think just to try to decide on 3 or 4 questions to begin with, and then do another one later for things answers we need from other areas, and just kind of spread it out.
Okay.
Make it easy.
Committee thoughts, comments? Okay. Any other liaison committee reports? Anybody go to any of the other meetings? Nope, hearing none. Next, I'll report on the Texas Council of Cardiovascular Disease and Stroke. We actually had a very interesting thing come up at the last committee meeting. A group of academic neurologists are looking to put together a consortium such that stroke research can be done better in Texas. The idea is to have data collectors available and the system in place so that they can rapidly move forward to do stroke studies throughout the state. And I don't know what the status of that ask is at the state legislature right now, whether it'll be this session or next session. But I thought it was a very exciting idea, and would want to report on that. Other than that, not much else has happened at the TCCVDS at the last meeting. Next up is Jim Grotta. Unfortunately couldn't make the meeting today, but he'll be here next time. He wanted to discuss options on bypass protocols, but instead, and even better, we have Dr. Mark Alberts, who, if you don't know, is one of the top stroke neurologists in the United States. He does these web videos and updates people, and we have enticed him from the Northwest, where it's cold, down to the good warm state of Texas, and you're now in Dallas. And he's going to talk to us and tell us about what I think is a very interesting concept, and that's Stroke Ready Hospital certification, which could be considered as a level 3 or level 4 potentially certification for our state. So please, if you'd let us hear.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rutledge and Council, for the very kind invitation and gracious invitation to speak to you. It's a pleasure to be here in the great state of Texas, even though some of my friends and colleagues have said, oh my goodness, it's so hot in the summer, how are you going to deal with it? And I said, that's okay. You don't have to shovel sunshine. So thank you very much for inviting me. These are my disclosures. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about the acute stroke-ready hospitals, as Dr. Rutledge has mentioned, in the bigger context of what we call a stroke system of care, which is a comprehensive, longitudinal, comprehensive, multidimensional organization to take care of patients, sort of from the beginning to the end, and I'll show you a picture in a second. It spans the spectrum of stroke care from primary prevention, calling 911, acute care, secondary prevention, rehab, and then return to the community. But like any system, and a good system that you may be familiar with is the trauma system, it's only as strong as its weakest link. And we don't want there to be any weak links in stroke care because that's bad for patients, it's bad for outcomes. And then I will focus, as Dr. Rutledge said, on the acute stroke-ready hospitals, but all of the elements are important. Next slide, please. So this is a pictorial, if you hit next it'll build. Yeah, this is a pictorial scheme of a stroke system of care, starting with primary prevention at the very top, public education, calling 911, EMS, transportation to the hospital, stroke centers, acute care, secondary prevention, rehab, return to the community, and hopefully if we do our job right, this cycle doesn't repeat for any patient, but sometimes it does because stroke is a tough disease to prevent. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I do want to emphasize that EMS plays a key role in a stroke system of care because typically they're the first medical professionals to see the patient, and their initial decisions, their initial actions will set the patient on a course or a trajectory that may have very significant implications for what happens for the rest of their life, So EMS plays a critical role here. You hit next, it'll build, yeah. So their role in triage, diversion, and routing really cannot be underestimated. And that's not the focus of what I'm going to talk about, but it is a very important component for the council to consider in this big system of care. Next slide, please. And just to remind us of the medical impact of stroke, there was a recent study of over 91,000 patients admitted to 625 hospitals throughout the country. These were all Medicare patients, and stroke is a disease of aging. Their average age was 79, 58% were female, 82% were Caucasians, so a pretty good representative sample. Overall, 62% of these patients were dead or readmitted to the hospital after just 1 year. After just 1 year, 62%, almost 2/3. This is a huge burden, and we really need to do a better job with these patients. Keep on hitting next, it'll build. So now looking at the stroke system of care, these are the different types of stroke centers that the Brain Attack Coalition and others have written about. You can see at the top of the pyramid is the Comprehensive Stroke Center, which is an academic medical center that can do all the fancy interventions. But these centers, as you'll see in a minute, are few and far between. The primary stroke center is a wide range of hospitals. They can provide standard care. They have a stroke unit, very able to use TPA. And then the focus for this afternoon is the acute stroke-ready hospital. These are envisioned to be rural hospitals, provide basic care, stabilize the patient, and then send them to either a PSC or CSC in the vast majority of cases. Next slide, please. So currently in the United States, there are 5,000 acute care hospitals. And if we do some projections based on patients, volumes, and what we already know, you can see that we're envisioning about 150 or 220 comprehensive stroke centers at the end of the day. Currently, we now have 1,000 primary stroke centers throughout the country, and I think these will level off at maybe 1,200 or 1,300. But the potential for acute stroke-ready hospitals is frankly huge. We could be looking at 1,200 to 1,500, maybe even 1,800 of these acute stroke-ready hospitals. So these could eclipse, in terms of numbers, PSCs and CSCs combined. And again, we haven't even touched the total of 5,000 acute care hospitals. So this is a very significant emerging component for stroke care. Next slide, please. So what is the vision? So the acute stroke-ready hospitals are really the new kids on the block. Typically, they would be small facilities located remotely away from a PSC or CSC. They would serve small cities or rural populations. They would have very small stroke populations, however. Your typical PSC or CSC sees 300, 400, 500 stroke patients a year. An acute stroke-ready hospital may only see one stroke patient a week, or maybe one every other week. They would have limited staffing and bed availability, but the concept here is that EMS would take the patient to the nearest acute stroke-ready hospital, again, set away in a rural type setting. What would happen there? Initial diagnosis, stabilization, begin acute therapies, and even though there's been a lot of talk about TPA, at the end of the day, only 5% of stroke patients get TPA, which we have to do better, but this is not all about TPA. It's about other treatments that patients might need to reduce intracranial pressure, to reduce blood pressure, other modalities. But the idea is that the patients would sort of stop there, get stabilized, get a scan, and then be sent off to the PSC or CSC if appropriate. So it's very important that acute stroke-ready hospitals have a relationship with a higher level care facility, a PSC or CSC. And this relationship would include development of protocols for transfers and referrals, a telestroke or a teleradiology link, video audio link to another facility, shared educational programs, some type of transfer agreement, so you don't have to make this up at 3 in the morning, that you've sorted out what to do. And then it's very important that the acute stroke-ready hospital, just like all hospitals, track their transfers and outcomes. How did the patients do? What happened at the end of the day? Next slide, please. So these are some of the key elements that will be in the upcoming acute stroke-ready hospital guidelines that will be published in Stroke in the near future. So for an acute stroke-ready hospital, they need to have an acute stroke team of at least 2 members, typically a physician and nurse, could be a mid-level. And this team has to be staffed 24/7. They have to have medical personnel at the bedside within 15 minutes of being called, 15 minutes. EMS and ED care protocols, and this includes annual training and education, as you were rightly talking about a few minutes ago. Able to do brain imaging and lab testing with a 45-minute turnaround time. We had extensive discussion on the Brain Attack Coalition about loosening those time criteria up to 60 minutes, but the group felt very strongly that the science supports 45 minutes, and by setting the bar high, the hospital and personnel and administration will be motivated to reach that bar. And I think back to a few years ago when we started doing TPA with a 3-hour time window, nobody thought that was possible. Give IV TPA within 3 hours, get the patient in the hospital, do a CT and a lab test within 3 hours. People were laughed out of the room. They thought that was impossible. And now we do that routinely every day of the year, 24 hours a day, 7 days of the week. So it is possible if there's a motivation and a will to do it. IV TPA with a 60-minute door-to-needle time. Again, a written transfer protocol to a CSC and a PSC, and then be able to establish a telemedicine link within 20 minutes of when someone picks up the phone and says, we need to link to you. They need to be able to do that within 20 minutes with live, audio, video, two-way communication. Next slide, please. So what are some of the interventions that an acute stroke-ready hospital would do? Obviously, IV TPA, everybody knows about. Reversal of coagulopathy. This is a very important issue because a lot of people with cerebral hemorrhages have them as a result of being anticoagulated. And you need to be able to reverse that sooner rather than later. A lot of these folks have increased intracranial pressure, and an acute stroke-ready hospital needs to be able to recognize that and at least begin therapy. Not that they have to take them to the OR, not that they have to do fancy stuff, but you can at least begin medical therapy for that. treatment of seizures, and then control of blood pressure, which may be a very important issue for some types of strokes. So what about some performance measures or performance metrics at an acute stroke-ready hospital? Evaluation of stroke severity, very important. You have to know your population so that you can be properly judged in terms of your treatment and outcomes. If you don't know how severe the stroke patients are, we can't judge how good or not so good your outcomes are. Time to first brain imaging. When they hit the door, can they get a CT within 45 minutes? Door to needle time for IV-TPA, which is now a national quality measure. Time to initiation of coagulation reversal, time to initiation of telemedicine link, time to transfer, and then any protocol violations. What about the certification process for acute stroke-ready hospitals? What the paper is going to say is that formal certification is important to ensure that requirements, standards, and performance are met. Certification must be done by an outside, independent organization. Self-certification is not acceptable. Many states in the country have this certification program where you basically fill out a postcard and you just check it off. Yes, I can do this. Yes, I can do that. And studies have shown that that type of self-certification is totally unreliable. Chelsea Kidwell and myself and others published this in Neurology several years ago in LA County, where we asked the hospitals to assess themselves for being a primary stroke center. 70%, 70% said that they met the requirements to be a primary stroke center when they self-certified. Then Chelsea went in and really certified them. And out of that 70%, only 7%, yeah, 1/10, only 7% really met all of the criteria. So this is a very important issue. It must include an assessment of facilities, personnel, protocols, and outcomes. It must include a site visit. Someone needs to be on the ground looking at that facility. They can certainly submit some information online. We envision, and again, I'm speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for the Joint Commission or DMV, I'm just giving you my projection of what I think is going to happen. I think the Joint Commission could maybe develop a half-day site visit that would occur every 2 to 3 years. That would be their certification paradigm. For primary stroke center, it's a 1-day site visit with 1 site visitor every 2 years. For comprehensive stroke center, it's a 2-day visit with 2 visitors. So I think that sort of hierarchy makes sense. The cost, and again, I'm just making this up, don't hold me to it, may be totally wrong, but my projection is maybe $5,000 to $7,500 every 2 to 3 years to be certified. Just my guess. Next slide, please. Why is this important for Texas? You have a huge geographic area. Your state is huge, I don't need to tell you that. And you have a large population in the state. But the large metropolitan areas are few and far between. They're very scattered, with huge distances in between. And you have huge transportation issues. It takes a long time to get from one hospital to another. And these are issues that need to be solved, and you also need to coordinate your care. Big state, many counties, many different regions. If your EMS organization is like it was in the great state of Illinois, everybody had their own little fiefdom. And to get them to do the same thing was like trying to herd cats. You can herd cattle, but you can't herd cats. And it was a very difficult situation. You had to go region by region and solve each problem over and over again. Next slide, please. Now, where to locate these hospitals? This was a study done out of Iowa, and they looked at primary stroke centers, but the concepts, I think, are very similar, and let me just walk you through it. Currently, in the state of Iowa, they had 12 primary stroke centers out of a total number of hospitals of 120. They found that their 12 primary stroke centers covered a little bit more than a third of the population. Then they did a little projection looking at hospitals and populations and how they were distributed. And they found that at a minimum, they could cover 75% of the population with 31 PSCs if some higher authority said where those PSCs were going to be located. Or you could let the hospitals decide, and then it would take 54 to cover 75% of the population. And again, Texas is obviously much different than Iowa. It's much bigger. But I think a group such as yourself and others needs to look at the geography, look at the hospitals, and say, at a minimum, what's the most efficient way to distribute our resources to cover the most number of patients with the least number of hospitals at all different tiers, comprehensive, primary, and acute stroke ready. Because at the end of the day, we all have an obligation to serve our citizens, our population, our patients. We need to find the most efficient way to do it, especially under today's fiscal environment. So let me talk briefly about this triage issue, and you can see acute stroke ready to either a CSC or PSC. And again, what's happening in medical care is this network of care. And an increasing number of hospitals are forming these care networks. And I think this is a good idea. And it goes beyond the money, which is what people talk about a lot. But I think the key concept here is maximizing the efficiency of care and resources. You want to centralize some processes and some facilities. Not every hospital in the state or in the country needs an MRI and MRA and TCD and all of this. But we know throughout medical care, and this has been proven time and time again, the more you do something, the better your outcomes. So do you want 100 hospitals each doing one endarterectomy a year? Or do you want 50 hospitals doing 2 a year? Or do you want 10 hospitals each doing 10 a year? It's very simple math, and the outcomes are clear. They favor higher volumes. But on the other hand, I think we should be sharing our protocols and expertise. Because at the end of the day, we have to do what's right for the patient. And then you want to have the patient return to their community as soon as possible. Now, one of the issues with stroke, one of the reasons why stroke is particularly challenging is that it's an emergent disease. It happens without any warning. You cannot plan for it. It's like trauma. And we have made that analogy, that parallel, time and time again. Stroke and stroke centers are like trauma and trauma centers. You have a golden hour, maybe it's a little bit longer for stroke, but trauma centers, stroke centers, very similar care paradigms. This is an example that came from a care network that Marilyn Reimer just published in Stroke this year. She looked at comprehensive stroke centers. She looked at 1,576 patients at a comprehensive stroke center compared to 423,000 at a hospital that was not a comprehensive stroke center, but was a Get With a Guideline hospital, versus over 91,000 patients cared for at a community hospital. And look at the difference in numbers and treatment rates. The use of IV TPA up to 4.5 hours, over 28% at a comprehensive stroke center, not even 7% at a Get With a Guideline hospital. Any TPA, IV, IA, or any combination, 30% at a comprehensive stroke center, only 4% at a community hospital. And you know that TPA is still the only FDA-approved medical therapy for acute ischemic stroke. So these are very compelling numbers. This is a study from Orange County, done by Dr. Kramer and colleagues, involved EMS. They had 9 hub hospitals, most were comprehensive stroke centers. They did not use telemedicine, so whatever you see here could be improved greatly if they did use telemedicine. They found that EMS transported 1,360 patients with suspected strokes, of which 2/3 really did have a stroke or a TIA, but 1/3, the diagnosis was wrong. Overall, 20% were treated with IV TPA, which is 4 times greater than the national average, which is great. 10% received some endovascular treatment, which is great. The door-to-needle time for IV TPA of 60 minutes, however, was only met in 1/4 of the patients. So that's the challenge that you have in a big state like California or Texas. It takes time to get these patients, even to the rural hospitals. It takes time. Next slide. So I'm going to give you 3 guiding principles for bypassing hospitals in a stroke system of care that may or may not apply to Texas. With multiple hospitals of various capabilities in a geographic area, or a stroke system, if you will, how can we properly triage and divert these patients to the most appropriate facility? Guiding principle 1. If all are equally close, meaning distance is not the issue, you want to go to the highest level stroke center initially. Why do you want to do that? Number 1, you do not know the type of stroke they have or what they're going to need. Number 2, even if the patient doesn't look that sick, they can deteriorate, they can get worse, and you want them in a hospital that can take care of them. And from the get-go, it's not clear what tests and treatments will be needed. That's principle one. Next principle. Besides the level of stroke center, what are the other considerations? Principle number 2, time is more important than distance because time is brain. This has been shown in study after study after study. So the factors to consider: weather, traffic, local geography, and your mode of transportation. So it's not distance from point A to point B, it's time. And sometimes EMS is real good with that, and sometimes they're not so good with that. But it requires a different way of thinking. Next. And then guiding principle number 3, to make the best possible decision, your folks in the field, your EMS folks and your medical control officers must know the actual capabilities of their hospitals. As you all know, some hospitals talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk. They don't do what they say, and they don't say what they do. So not every hospital that claims to be X, Y, or Z will actually have those capabilities. And the EMS and your medical control people really need to know what these hospitals are capable of doing, as well as bed availability and who is on diversion. And just like all politics is local, I found that all EMS routing is local. So you need to keep that in mind. So there are a few challenges with field triage of stroke patients. The EMS personnel are correct in terms of their diagnosis 50 to 60% of the time. There are assessment tools for stroke severity, as we talked about a few minutes ago, that I think are important. But even with that, diagnosing an ischemic from a hemorrhagic stroke in the field can be extremely challenging and vexing. But believe it or not, there are pilot studies looking at putting CTs in ambulances. I know, it sounds sort of Star Trek-y, but CTs are getting smaller, ambulances are getting bigger, so it might be possible to do that. There are studies looking at that. And then patients might still have to stop at the local acute stroke-ready hospital to at least be stabilized before they're either sent by helicopter or fixed plane or whatever to the PSC or CSC. But as we talked about, EMS is typically very fragmented and localized, and you have a challenge to get uniform adoption of your care protocols. So in conclusion, let me say acute stroke-ready hospitals do offer rural access for acute diagnosis, treatment, and stabilization, pending transfer to the next facility. The great state of Texas represents further challenges due to its large size and scattered metropolitan areas. EMS must evolve to meet these challenges. Looking to the future, I think the key challenge of a stroke system of care will really relate more to EMS triage than the stroke centers. We know how to do these stroke centers. We know how to care for patients in the hospital. We just need to tweak it a little bit. The good news is that all of these problems are solvable. We're not asking anybody to break the speed of light barrier, okay? Goodwill, hard work, and common sense can make a difference. And I have sat in more than my share of committees where sometimes the goodwill and the common sense has been hard to come by. But the bottom line for me is do what is best for the patient. If you keep that in mind, if you always ask yourself, what's best for the patient, the correct answer crystallizes and it becomes crystal clear what you have to do. Just a matter of getting there. I want to thank Dr. Rutledge and the council for their very gracious invitation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if there's time. If not, I certainly understand. Thank you very much.
So, are there any quick questions?
What is your what's your ETA to those primary care centers or the certified stroke center time-wise? If you can make it within 60 minutes, within 45 minutes, or what? From the EMS perspective, if you would bypass a smaller hospital.
So if I could repeat the question, what is the time window for one of the bypass protocols? It's a very important question, and each region develops its own rules. In general, and again, there may be EMS folks in the audience that can address this, their general rule, as I understand, is about 15 to 20 minutes. If you can get the patient to a higher level hospital within 15 to 20 minutes and they're otherwise stable, do it. But Texas, 15 or 20 minutes, it can take you that long just to go across, pasture. So I think those times need to be modified for the great geographic areas that you have here. So what works in the Northeast may not be applicable here, but that's their general rule, is that if the patient is stable and you can get to the higher level within 15 or 20 minutes, then do it. It's okay to bypass. But here it might be an hour and 15 minutes. So this is where the regions need to sit down and look at the availability of hospitals and resources and distances and times and see what makes sense for them. I don't think anybody's going to put down a hard and fast rule because the different parts of Texas just have different challenges.
May we have a copy of your presentation?
It's fine with me. I'll leave it on the computer here.
It's perfect. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Ask your expertise and what's your vision or recommendation on getting these rural hospitals to voluntarily do this, because all the things you described cost significant amounts of money. So any advice you could give Texas in that perspective?
Well, it's a very good question. I would say a few things. Number one, these patients are coming in for medical care anyways. It's not like we're reaching out and grabbing them. They're coming in for medical care. It's just a matter whether they're going to get the proper care within the proper time frame and have better outcomes, which is going to be good for the hospital, the patient, and the state's budget. That's number one. Number two, what happened with primary stroke centers is that once one or two in a city got that designation, then the other places that didn't get it were a little bit jealous, and they didn't want to be bypassed. So then they all wanted to apply. And within a rural region, if you have 5 or 6 or 7 hospitals that could be acute stroke ready, if 1 or 2 get it, and the other ones know they're going to be bypassed, that puts a little bit of peer pressure on those other hospitals. So I think if you get a few to buy in, I think a rising tide is going to float all the boats. But there have to be a few initial risk takers. That's true.
So how do you get past the risk taker? How do you get somebody to jump out there? So my area is suburban in one county, surrounded by 5 rural counties that each have 1 hospital. Well, but one hospital in the rural counties doesn't want to go for support stroke certification because they don't have to. They're the only hospital who's going to bypass them.
Right.
So how do you, but I agree with you, if I can get one to do it, then the rest of them can tumble because our protocol will go in. So how do you get over the hump that?
It's a very good question. I would suggest two general approaches. Number one, you have to know your hospital. I would seek out the hospital with the highest or largest stroke population and then identify a champion at that hospital. Because like you rightly pointed out, if you could get one to do it, then it's a domino effect. And the one most likely to do it is the one that's already seeing the highest number of stroke patients. Make them your friend, find a champion there, and then you'll get the ball rolling. And sometimes you need to reach out and offer them some inducement, like a startup grant. And that's what other states have done. They've offered startup grants for some of these hospitals. $5,000 or $10,000 is enough to get them over the hump. I see various fingers pointing to various people.
Let me get my checkbook.
But what I would emphasize to the powers that be is that these patients are already coming in. It's just a matter, are we going to give them better care? And if $10,000 to make a hospital, an acute stroke ready hospital, is going to provide better care to hundreds of patients, that's an easy investment. That's an easy decision to make, in my opinion. Right. Well, you know, there are opportunities. Some pharmaceutical companies may offer startup grants to get them over the hump. That's worked before. And then maybe other national organizations like AHA or NSA could also help. Yes. Yes.
Have you discussed this with Joint Commission who currently surveys about possibly setting up some guidelines to survey?
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question about certain metropolitan areas have a lot of clustered PSCs in addition to their CSCs. And when you talk about routing to the highest level of care, that kind of takes away the support of the primary stroke centers, and some of the primary stroke centers in the area have, door-to-needle times about 80, 90 minutes, which is national average, which is
Sure.
fine, but of course we want to work to improve that. And I wonder, if the administration stops supporting those primary stroke centers as strongly as they are right now, because we're going to start routing to the highest level of care, that certainly puts the walk-in patients to those primary stroke centers at a disadvantage. So I was wondering, do you think maybe not saying the highest level of care, maybe saying the closest level 1 or level 2 might be better? Or what are your thoughts on that? Because I know the metropolitan areas are having a much different time than the rural areas
Sure.
in Texas.
Yeah, very good points you bring up. Number one, some of those primaries are going to go away because they're going to become comprehensives, right? Most of the comprehensives are already primaries. So some of them are going to evolve. But number two, what we didn't talk about on the slide because of time, is that it's not just highest level of care, it actually says highest level of appropriate care. So what is appropriate? If someone walks in with a TIA a day ago, do they need to go to a comprehensive stroke center? No. I don't think anybody would say that. So appropriate for that patient, for that clinical circumstance.
So severity-based?
Could be severity-based, but again, EMS doing severity scales in the field is something that's evolving. That's very important. So that's the component that was missing. We couldn't talk about all those nuances, but the highest level of appropriate care for that patient.
Well, great. Thank you
Thank you.
very much. Obviously, if Joint Commission does a acute stroke ready hospital certification, that's something we could look at in our system. We already have a level 3, which is called support stroke facility level in Texas. That's very similar, and it'll be interesting. My thought is acute stroke ready hospitals, we could look at them becoming a level 4, like in the trauma center. Versus the stroke support facilities, which are level 3, but level 3 is already pretty close. It'd be interesting to look at the TTAF certification that we have right now for support stroke facilities and see how different it is from what you have, because they actually sound, and the reason I was very intrigued to have you come is they sound very similar to me. Do we have any TTAF people here? Wonderful. Could we get your comments? I don't want to take all of Diana's time. I got about 5 minutes or so. Do you have any comments? Because you have the experience of actually doing what he's talking about.
Actually, in my company, we've developed a system to designate in Texas, we have developed a system to designate level 3 stroke support facilities. And the criteria that you mentioned is very, very similar, almost exact to what we created using the rule that Texas passed some time back. We have had some challenges in getting buy-in for certainly the same reasons that Christine talked. It takes money and time. We've developed the same process that we use for our trauma system. We have 4 designated level 3 stroke support facilities now, and there are several out there that are applying to be reviewed. We utilize subject matter experts. We've credentialed stroke surveyors to go in and review the program in depth. They spend a day to a day and a half inside these little facilities, smaller facilities. The real challenge is the funding. But the greatest success is that, and I think I saw Bertha. Bertha has a Good Shepherd Medical Center in Linden. She was one of the first to step up and do the level 3. And her community did it. They wanted it simply because it was the best thing for the patient. And I think that's been the greatest mover, is that they have patients that are being transferred to tertiary care facilities. There are transfer agreements in place. They have protocols, EMS protocols. They do not bypass the smaller facilities. And they're doing a great job out there. And the rural Texas is really where we're targeting, because obviously urban has a lot of resources that the rural areas don't have. But we are seeing more and more interest generate, and we're hoping to continue to grow that system. The RACs have already, the regional areas already have stroke committees.
They worked with regional protocols. They developed field triage protocols. And so a lot of the work that you're mentioning has already been done in Texas. We certainly learned a lot from you today, but there's some more work to be done yet, and there's challenges out there, and anything you can offer to help us get some of this off the ground, we would appreciate.
You know, the other thing I would suggest, and I don't know, is that these small rural facilities, I don't know how closely they're teamed up or allied with a larger facility that they're partnered with to help them with resources and protocols and maybe even a little bit of funding if they're part of the same care system. That might be a dynamic to explore.
And that's one of the requirements. They already have to have a relationship built with a tertiary care facility in order to apply and to move forward. And certainly they don't want to drip and ship without a facility that's prepared to accept their patients. So those protocols are in place, and they're working through those. But once again, it's still funding, personnel issue. Thanks.
Thanks. Does the committee have any comments or discussion? No. Excellent. Thank you, Mark, very, very much. Next up is a presentation on the National Cardiovascular Data Registry by Diana Barrett. We've been struggling on databases, and I thought this would be an excellent talk to give us some additional insight in what may be available.
So another northerner in the room. I'm sorry, it is an invasion. We've all met at the border and decided we're coming south. We've had enough. My name is Diana Barrett. I am from the American Heart Association. I am a Get With The Guidelines staff person covering from Waco to the water. I have my counterparts here as well. And I'm here to talk to you about Get With The Guidelines simply because there is perhaps some variations, I guess, in people's knowledge in what it can and cannot do. But the overlying theme is really, I'm not here to sell you a product. Most of you are already enrolled in the program. The reality is we're trying to talk about what the state can do and the RACs can do to sort of look at consistent data across all regions, or you can personalize it to your region, but just to make sure everybody is talking apples to apples. That's really what we're looking at. So I'm going to show you what the program's about, but really talk about it in a broad sense of how Get With The Guidelines and non-Get With The Guidelines hospitals can all be reporting similar information the same way so that you're all being compared the same way and that you can actually look at what is and isn't going on. Next. So Get With The Guidelines is a quality improvement program. It's a web-based program. It's been around since 2003. It's just part of one of the American Heart Association's suite of programs. We have 6 various modules. Get With The Guidelines Stroke, which we'll go through, which looks at TIA, ischemic, and hemorrhagic stroke patients. Action Registry, Get With The Guidelines, which many of you, if you're trauma stroke coordinators, are familiar with, looking at STEMI and STEMI care. Get With The Guidelines Heart Failure, which talks about acute heart failure care as well as decreasing 30-day readmission. Get With The Guidelines Resuscitation, which is a newest program, one of our newer programs looking at in-hospital, the treatment of in-hospital codes, code blues, rapid response. Get With The Guidelines AFib is an atrial fibrillation module, obviously, and that will be launching soon. And then Guideline Advantage, which actually takes us outside the hospital to actually look at those folks that we can perhaps prevent in the primary care in the outpatient setting, sort of prevent them from coming to the hospital or prevent the readmission. On the Get With The Guidelines data, since it is a national data tool, there's been a wide series of publications that have come out of it over the years. Next one. In addition, we have our target programs, which are target heart failure and target stroke looking at the door to needle less than 60 minutes. And our Mission Lifeline, which a good chunk of Texas is already actively engaged in, building STEMI systems of care. We also have accreditation programs looking at advanced certification in heart failure, primary stroke center, and comprehensive stroke center in a very close collaborative with the Joint Commission. And now we'll just go right into Get With The Guidelines Stroke. And as you can tell, yes, I'm from up north. I talk really fast. I'm sorry. If it's too fast, somebody wave your hand. Okay, so as I said, launched in 2003. What many of you may not know is there's already 2.4 million patients in this database. as I said, more studies. What's different about Get With The Guidelines is that it's concurrent case management. It's a web-based program, so data in, data out immediately. That's something that's very unusual. Real-time reporting, downloadable raw data. So every hospital that's enrolled in Get With The Guidelines, in a couple of clicks, can download their raw data. And I mention that just in terms of thinking about how you would want that to be visualized, perhaps in your region, in your RAC, or in the state. There is an EMS pre-hospital tab, which is fairly new. You just turn it on. It allows you to actually add in the run number. So that's very important when you're trying to close that gap between EMS and hospital. And some of the RACs are having people manually enter information for, here's a list of your run numbers last month. Please provide us information. Well, this is a way to sort of close that. You could actually download the data by run numbers and then have that linked together. We have a 30-day post-discharge follow-up option, which hospitals can turn on, and it basically looks at the continuity of care between while they're in the hospital and what happens post-discharge. We'll actually be coming forward with a 90-day section 2, and that's really important when you're looking at true outcomes in care. The recognition program, which are, do we have any Get With The Guidelines award hospitals here? Raise your hand high. It's a recognition program which it's not just fluff. There's a lot of substance behind it. It's looking at least on minimum 7 measures to make sure hospitals are adhering to a certain quality of care, and then we celebrate that. A data dictionary built into the program that's continually reviewed. We update our program twice a year, so we're not only looking at the same terminology, but we're always looking at updating the science as well. We work in conjunction with the Joint Commission and the other regulatory bodies to make sure we are at least attempting to speak the same language, get as close to consensus as we possibly can. Over the past few years, those of you that are users have seen a great alignment between CMS, Joint Commission, American Heart Association standards and definitions. Patient-specific education materials, which means that when you enter a record into Get With The Guidelines, if that patient had high blood pressure, it'll pre-check on the patient education materials a high blood pressure handout for that patient. The program is technology behind the scenes would be, it's a core measure certified vendor called Outcome Sciences. Within the program, we have national and regional benchmarking groups. That too is very important for this group to think about. It's a way to compare yourself to the state or to the country. Online tools, we have a lot of shared best practices, hospital networking, physician level reporting, also important because you're able to actually track the care that was provided by individual physicians simply by their MPI number. Optional fields, which gives sort of an advantage to hospitals interested in doing specific research. We can't imagine anything else you would want to collect, but often there are some studies going on that hospitals want to add on. Customizable reports, which means you're actually able to generate reports that are through specific filtered groups. So if you want to look at race or ethnicity in your region, if you want to look at the quality of care on Tuesday versus Sundays, that's a real teller. So, and as I mentioned, the patient-specific education materials. The recognition program, which I'll go through very quickly, as I said, it mentions 7 key measures. We have gold, silver, bronze. We have a plus award, which allows for those hospitals who have already knocked out the first 7 to say, you know what, we want to go above and beyond. We want to look at these additional measures, such as NIH stroke scale and all of these other things that allows them to just go to a higher level. And then the Target Stroke Honor Roll, which is where we celebrate those hospitals that are achieving those under 60-minute door-to-needle times. And that's a list of the measures. You don't need to memorize them. There won't be a quiz. And these are some of the ways that we celebrate those hospitals in the stroke journals, in U.S. News and World Report. And that's really important because if you are a rural hospital, to have yourself listed in U.S. News and World Report is budget busting. You could never do that on your own, but through the American Heart Association, we want to celebrate everybody on an equal level playing field. So you will see that largest academic institute right next to that rural smaller facility who has achieved the same things. And isn't that an awesome thing? That's real peer-to-peer, really something to celebrate. Next one. Okay, so we're going to attempt to open. I just want to give you a really quick visual of what the program actually looks like. So I won't go through all of the elements because most of them are really more hospital specific. Okay. So it's really a real-time, it's all fully secure website, web-based. Each individual person has their own, and I'm going to have to do this part. This is basically what the visual looks like. How many of you are actual users in Get With The Guidelines? Very few, right? So for many of you, is this the first time you're seeing it? You've heard the name. Have you ever seen the tool? Yeah, okay. So this is basically what their homepage would look like. And they would just go in and enter patients, view a patient grid if they want to see a list of them, run reports. It's all very web-based. These are video trainings that we put on the homepage. If you look down here, you'll see they'll be able to see how many hospitals they have in. There's a whole ton of resources. These are all hyperlinks that take them to the information that they would need to see. I'm going to open a record and I'll show you really quickly what the visual of the page looks like when we talk about that. Or not, depending on the signal. Okay, so this is basically what it looks like, and hospitals are entering this data. Sometimes they're using a web interface to take it from one source to another source. As they go through the program, they would just answer a series of questions. We have skip logic built in, so where something doesn't apply, it grays out. It allows you to also enter information if you're transferring a patient, and then when you get to the stage where you say that you're transferring them, it'll gray out the rest of the information, but still that transferring facility still has data. One field that I mentioned, here it is. This error and warnings box there will tell hospitals as they're entering the data whether they've missed a field, whether there's something needed in there that's critical to what they're doing. This newest special initiatives tab is the one I talked about, the EMS tab, that actually asks for the run number, the agency name, sequence number, as well as a series of other pre-arrival questions. These are all optional questions, but on a local level within your RAC or within your hospital system or as a state, you could say, you know what, we want to commit to these fields, we'd like everybody to enter these fields, and then the data downloads or the data received would all be consistent. And the other nifty feature of Get With The Guidelines is that as a hospital enters a record, they would simply hit this calculate button, and it's able to tell them in real time whether they met a guideline or had a fallout, which is also very important. These tabs up at the top that say download, reports, data upload, so that's where a hospital could generate a data download. You could actually build a pre-existing data download, and they could just rerun it each time they needed it. Now, the reason I say that is in application to this group, they could build a data download that's specific to their RAC, that their RAC wants quarterly, and submit it quarterly. And you would know that everybody is reporting the same way. Same thing is on the state level. I'm going to show you quickly how they can run a report, and I'll show you a couple of samples of real ones. So this is what the page looks like in terms of them running reports. These measure descriptions on the side actually talks to the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So the program runs reports based on what is actually appropriate for those patients. And then there's a series of questions that they have here. We had some fact sheets, okay, that were handed out. That actually lists all of the measures that are built in to Get With The Guidelines that are pre-existing. So what I urge you to do is, if you're trying to build something where everybody's reporting in, whether they're using Get With The Guidelines or not, we've kind of done the work for you. So there's a ton of reports on here. So you could begin at the beginning and say, you know what, we're going to take these first 7 measures, or we would like these 7 and the 2 on page 4, and you can share that and make sure that everybody is, again, reporting apples to apples. As you can see, there's just a tremendous number of things already built in, going all the way down. In hospital mortality, EMS, how they arrived, age, diagnosis, etc. And here are the compare to groups that I had mentioned, where you're able to compare your hospital to whatever type of other region there may be. There's a series of filter options built in. Again, that's where I mentioned you can do it by race, by gender, health insurance status, etc. So I'm going to close that and go back to this. There's Larissa. Okay. Oh, I lost my page. So the real point of this is really, now you've kind of seen it, you have the visual of what we're talking about when we mention Get With The Guidelines. It's really about getting all sites reporting on the same measures using the same data dictionary, whether you're in the program or not. And I can say that enough because that's the reality of it. What good is having statewide or RAC reporting if each facility is interpreting the question differently? Your data becomes meaningless and it doesn't do what you're trying to accomplish it to do. We want to build consistency. There are, as I mentioned, so some of the options you have in terms of how you would have reporting in your RACs. Number one, look at the fact sheet. Take some of those predefined measures. I know that you have 7, 8, right, but keep them current with what is being collected already. Make sure they sync up. If you're going to go back to your communities, say we want you to report, well, look at what's there and make sure it's something that's viable for them to do. Number two is to have a super user. Now, this is something that was actually done in New York State that they've done, where their state level has a super user where they're able to actually run reports comparing regions to regions. Number three would be benchmarking groups. So this is something we will be looking at actually incorporating on your behalf. So a benchmarking group, in the report, you're able to run a report, compare me to the rest of the country. How is my TPA? Well, you could also have a benchmarking group that is your RAC or your region. The only thing that a benchmarking group has to have is 6 hospitals or more in them. And then number 4 would be the central repository structure, which is something that I've heard several different RACs talking about. And what we're trying to prevent is by having 22 different central repositories. So that's what we're really trying to avoid. So either the concept of a state-based repository, some combination thereof, a repository as well as reporting back, that type of thing, consistency again. So we kind of talk about this. The predefined measures reports is basically everything on the fact sheet. You can use that at the state level. You can say, you know what, every year I want you to report these 10. The local RAC could say, I want you to report these 4, whichever that format is. And again, apply it to non-Get With the Guidelines hospitals as well. The advantage of that, can you go back one? The advantage of that is that, again, they're readily available. Everybody's talking the same language. They can do it in real time. By asking hospitals to answer questions that they don't readily have the answers to is incredibly time-consuming. And what I've seen in the different RACs is that hospitals are not reporting back to you. So you're not getting your data in a timely basis. Next one. The other one is the benchmark comparison groups. As I said, this is something we're probably going to do. We would need guidance from the state to say what you want those benchmarking groups to be. In our view, it would be the RACs. Each hospital would be able to compare themselves to the local RAC. If there's a super user, then the state could run reports that says RAC by RAC by RAC by RAC. How are they doing? Next one. So this is sort of a view of what that could look like when the comparison groups in New York, what they have is, most hospitals already have compare my hospital to Texas or to the country. You have that built in. But it would actually be, like down there, they have, compare it to, this is their equivalent of a RAC, Nassau County, Brooklyn, the different boroughs, New York City, etc. Next one. And here's an example of one that I did that sort of shows you what one comparison group would look like. This is an example of the predefined measures across Texas. So I ran this for you yesterday. This is real-time data. If they had a record in yesterday, there's your results. That's how you see all the Get With Guidelines hospitals, what their rates are. The line across, of course, is the 85% benchmark. And it's looking at TPA, antithrombotics, VTE, all the way through to smoking cessation, LDL, statin. Next one. Here's a Texas comparison report, and this is something that you could replicate RAC by RAC. This one just looks at the mode of arrival in Texas versus the nation. So it could actually be in all of the nation versus RAC V, if that was something you foresaw. But this talks about how patients arrive to your hospital. Next one. Number 3, as I mentioned, the centralized super user, which would be something that I would recommend being at the state level. The state is able to run reports, so they're able to pull them up. A version of that is they do have access to your data if the hospital so chooses. It's not a necessity of it. And they would have access to the site level data, as I said, only with permission, but they would also be able to utilize the pre-built reports. This would not be raw data. It's just a quick, easy access of reporting only. Next one. And that's what sort of it looked like. Go to the next one right after that. Yeah. So this is the LDL document across all of the RACs in New York State. This is what that would look like. So in Texas, you would just insert different. But that's a sample of what they would be able to run. Next one. And then the last option, of course, is the repository, which again, from my suggestion would be a state-level repository of some sort. This is where the raw data comes in. This is where the research becomes available. You can sync it to EMS. Any field that is in Get With the Guidelines, and there's a lot of them, you could say to your constituents, I guess these are the fields I would want you to report every quarter, every month, every year, that type of thing. They could build it, they could refresh it each time. And the thing about those data elements is they're applicable, they'll be downloaded into a CSV file, so they're actually applicable to non-Get With the Guidelines hospitals as well. And I think, next one. And that's just a really short example of what a raw data download would look like. So in essence, a hospital could download it, and you could do this right now, but then you could upload it to the repository, which as of now does not exist at the state level, but if they were to go that route, they could. And that would be summary. Those are just your options summarized a little bit using the existing measures, which is really kind of a step one. You know, you're all collecting different sets of data. Some RACs aren't collecting any data. Look at the list and pick what you like. So what you think is really applicable. Add the benchmark groups, which is something we'll be working on, hopefully with you, to define what you want those groups to be. Super user, which would be something that I would suggest a state do, but it could actually be done by a RAC if they have enough hospitals under them. They could be a super user. And then that raw repository of raw data. Next one. And that would be it. The only thing that we wanted to mention that we do have coming up, we do have, as I mentioned, we update the program twice a year. So we have a spring update coming, and we'll also be releasing a comprehensive stroke center tool for those comprehensive stroke centers. We're looking for volunteers to test. I don't know if you've seen our FAST campaign, but it's out online on YouTube. We urge you to use that in your communities across Texas. Texas Stroke Systems of Care legislation, which you may see coming forth over the next year, hopefully sooner. So please keep an eye on that, and your support would always be welcome. And then publication of the Comprehensive Primary Stroke Center sort of recommendations will be coming over the next few months. Next one. These are my colleagues who we share the state of Texas. We work directly with the local hospitals. We work with the RACs. If you need any support, that sort of shows you how they're assigned as of now, looking at the 22 RACs that are currently in existence. That's it. And that's it. Any questions? Any thoughts on how would you like it to appear in your state in terms of reporting data? Share them.
So you have to be my rep, so I'll be happy to take your card.
Diana?
So Diana, we have a question on the dais.
Three. Sorry, Diana. So I have three questions. So one, if we do have the EMS overlay, how many extra measures are we limited to?
Okay, so in that EMS tab, the way you tell and Get With the Guidelines what's required or not is whether it's bold or not. Nothing in the EMS tab is required. It's completely optional. But I urge hospitals to at least start collecting the run number.
But how many additional add-on measures that we can customize total?
You want to add fields?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, for sure.
So I've had this experience before where you could actually add fields onto your particular screen. So the pro of that is, of course, you get to collect what you want to collect. The con of that is the only way to sort of run those reports is they either appear as filters or you have to do a data download. So that's the heads up. There's a slight fee, very minimum. But you also have about 14 optional fields, so chances are pretty good you might be able to find something in there that you can use an optional field for, but it can be done, absolutely.
The second thing is, who has ownership of the data or the repository? That the
Dr.
state-
Rutledge, excuse me.
Yes.
We have run over into cardiac's time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Who has ownership of the data?
So there isn't a repository, but each hospital
That would be
owns their
great.
data, and they could download it as they see fit and share it as they see fit.
I have one. And the hospitals that don't participate, how does the AHA plan to approach them if they're going to participate in our state?
They can call us.
Because there's a fee associated with the program, so that's my only concern.
Yeah, so the
that's
fee is
something
less
we
than
wanna talk about.
$1,900 to be honest, so less than, yeah. Yeah.
If we brought you 100 hospitals, would you do that in price?
We actually have 100 participating right now in the state.
I can't answer that question.
We got to go.
Yeah, Could we take those questions? I'm sure she would be happy to answer your
Thank you,
questions. As a sidebar?
Um,
I said, I'm sure she'll be happy to answer
Right.
anyone's questions after the meeting.
And so, to try to quickly end, because we want to give Hart a chance to go, are there any quick announcements? None. And I don't think we have time to address that. We'll have to do it offline. Are there any, and quickly, are there any things that the members would like to see on the next agenda?
I'd like to share a report on the next one with the, about the Southwest Advisory Stroke Committee for the American Heart Association. I'm a member of that, so I can share information about what we're talking and working on. Okay, is there anything else? Otherwise, we'll stand adjourned. Great, thank you, guys.